Bumpers and Robinsons, this is Internet Personality Vangelus, and Legacy United kicked off with a double dose of animated universe, featuring Bumblebee in the Deluxe class. This little troublemaker had a solid 6 hours of ugly discourse when he first turned up, almost entirely based on how hideously mistransformed his shoulders were in the stolen factory sample photo shoot that was his public debut. Many folks goldfished their own brains and moved on that very same day when it became clear his shoulders could be adjusted. I'm so happy I slept through most of that.
This video was sponsored in part by ToyHacks.com. Use the code MAYTheVangelus through the month of May 2024 for 15% off your order of labels and other paraphernalia. Using the code supports the channel. Supporting the channel feeds the machine.
Bumblebee's alt mode is a tiny, palmable, and plump yellow car. I think the general shape is excellent, and his yellow chassis is adorned with the asymmetrical black stripe and rooftop red signal light that reconnect my memories of the year 2008 to the present. Once I get over the initial nostalgia flavor, though, I do have to call out how chunkily messy the rear windows are, between accommodating some 5mm ports and jamming in some disparate black bricks of semi-concealed hingery. I'm fine with the hinges under the rearview mirrors, though. It's just wholesome nitrous. There are, as mentioned, some 5mm ports, and what better way to fill them than with the included rocket boosters? They can go into the classic position or along the bottom of the doors. And for the sake of full accessory storage, you can plug the two stinger things into the rockets, which doesn't look horrific, just confusing. Legacy United's take on animated Bumblebee has one really big shakeup in his transformation scheme, and it's in his legs. You've got to peel open the back and sides of the car mode to get access to them, and then, just when you think it's time to fold the front bumpers into big bumble boots, everything starts flipping and inverting to reveal that crossing into the Legacy world has given Bumblebee smaller feet! This also adds literal layers of complexity to the toy, though it's all very simple to execute once you've seen how it works. And after that, the arms convert quite simply, though you may find the shoulder mechanisms a bit esoteric at first blush. But hey, it all finishes on a proper dynamic chest flip-down head reveal. Swish. Legacy United Animated Universe Bumblebee is a wee little guy with a lot of callbacks to the original, but shrouded in proportions that fully redefine him from funny little guy into the more common Bumblebee aesthetic of athletic scout who might have a knife. Obviously, his feet got smaller while his original feet became his heels, but really the main issue I have there is that none of the faux car sculpting on his new shoes is actually painted in, rendering much of it nigh invisible. I know there's a black stripe discourse, but to be honest, I can't bring myself to have a passionate take on that topic. I do think the head sculpt is pretty solid. It's absolutely clear who the character is, right down to his mischievous little smirk, though it is odd to see it so proportional to his body. This is a bit of an endless conversation, so I'll just say that I don't mind his proportions, but they also are much more of a post-prime 2010 style Bumblebee than the stylization of Derek Wyatt's work, which does grace the horizons of the other endless conversation about whether or not Legacy should have been tweaking things so. Partly making up for his legitimately diminutive size, Bumblebee includes 4 accessories, well, 2 accessory pairs. He's got the original Deluxe's rocket boosters, which come in a smoky translucent plastic and can plug into any open 5mm port. They make for a cool rocket pack, or a very odd pair of giant blasters. The other pair of accessories can actually peg in to turn them into stinger pistols, as they are a pair of 3mm enabled stingers. However, to mimic both the original Deluxe and Bumblebee's special power in the show, you can fold his hands away, mount the stinger pieces, and then arrange his arms in a surprisingly inflexibly specific position to unite them for a big ol' stinger blast. This also means he can't really use them as single-handed stingers, since they mount on angled parts for the sake of that specific pose. I really liked this gimmick on paper, but in execution I mostly find it minorly frustrating to get all the arm parts aligned just right. By the way, one stinger has a port while the other has a peg. Both of mine have a port. Somewhere out there, someone has a pair of pegs. I solved this issue by creating a 3mm peg of my own out of brass rod, so I guess that makes mine better than all of yours because it has more metal. This guy is physically tiny, but his little itty-bitty head on his little itty-bitty ball socket joint still has a pretty solid range of left and right looking motion. The platform it's on adds a little bit of possibility, as does the ball joint it's on. There's even just the tiniest little bit of tilt for a little bit of that sassy, quizzical, what you got and what you gonna do about it kind of factor, kind of thing. Anyway, let's get into it. The shoulders work, but let me demonstrate how. So there is a transformation joint that is a double hinge here. That's one range of motion. When you're bending the elbow, there is an elbow. It bends pretty well. In fact, there's even a wrist joint, which is friggin' cool, and a bicep swivel, but the shoulder is odd. So when you want to move the shoulder forward, you can move it on this axis, and also on this axis, and between these two, the range on this arm is actually pretty good. However, using it is not what I would call like 100% intuitive, because I think as a Transformers collector and fondler, you're probably trained to feel like you're supposed to choose one of these, not use them in tandem. Did these have to be this weird joint design? I'm not sure. I think this is partly to accommodate some of the mass shifting in the transformation, but the important thing to me is it's not cut me off from any major poses I want to do. So I just wanted to show like how this all works together as a sort of beautiful union of lots and lots of pieces. And then when we first saw this guy, his arm looked like that, and everyone thought that was stock, and like, what happened to all of your critical thinking? The waist can rotate happily, and if you flip this up and undo the soft lock on the waist, and kind of just leave this as a bit of a shirt, you gain a pretty darn usable ab crunch. It feels semi-on purpose, although you are having to unlock the transformation slightly to do this. You don't actually have to untab this necessarily, but I'd say it's a bit safer than forcing it out with this motion. Very cool joint, especially in tandem with all this neck look-upping that he can do. Like, look at that. Yonder hips can go out about this far, which is still, you know, a nice perpendicular bonk. And he can kick forward, he can kick backward, his knees can bend really tightly, and his ankles have a tilt that gets a little bit locked because of the weird decision with having the front bumper as a heel. It kind of snags a little bit on this corner, but not in any way that feels dangerous. It's just a thing you have to de-snag it past. You can also wiggle the foot forward a little bit, not hugely, but the ankle tilt's pretty good. I like posing this guy. He's not what I would call, like, ultra posable, but once again, like, I'm not having trouble finding poses that I want to do, and I'm not running into, like, hard boundaries outside of, like, a lot of extremes. And, posing him, because of the compact nature of this figure and the really, like, unique shoulder design, I find something satisfying about posing him, especially when I decide to use the unofficial ab crunch and just get a little bit of this dynamicism going. It's satisfying is my operating word I'll use. This figure does achieve some cool stuff in making use of its small size to pack in some surprising levels of complexity and high component count design, especially in the shoulders. Objectively speaking, I can see a Deluxe's budget at work between the figure and the 4 accessories. Subjectively speaking, I love messing around with the figure. I find his size endearing in both modes, and the transformation rather impressive in such a compact package. But the accessories landed somewhere between flat and bunkum. The rocket boosters are aggressively fine and adequate, fulfilling a function without impressing or overachieving, but the stingers have mostly been a miss for me, and I swear it's not because I had to make my own peg for them. Their whole inclusion feels fully baked with a lot of ingredients I wouldn't have chosen, and the lack of smoothness in achieving their one big pose just takes all the air out of the tires for me. So overall, I like the figure, but I wish I didn't pay the Deluxe MSRP, and his height has nothing to do with it! You bot mode height to price point hardliners haven't had my support since Siege Wave 1, so sit back down and talk to all the 18-inch combiner hardcores in that stature fetish club I assume you all frequent. I just wish the accessories thrilled me more. Am I saying I want to see how much of a downsized Hydrodrive pack could have crammed into this package? I decline to comment. Anyway, this has been Internet Personality Vangelus, and before you take a swing at my big smug bumbleface for poking fun at your robot height preferences, consider supporting me directly via Patreon or YouTube membership. Yeah, I don't know, I figured the old tsundere razzle-dazzle might work. It's what Bumblebee would have done.